The monthly business meeting of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. For those of you who would like to follow along with the program tonight, there are agendas on the table just to the right of the exit doors on a table, and if you're watching remotely, you may get an agenda at accgov.com. And those of you who have electronic devices, including cell phones, would you please turn those to off or to silent? And anyone who has a handout that they'd like to share with us, if they will hand them to Mr. Berryman, he'll make sure that we get them. There are 4 opportunities tonight for citizen input. Our consent agenda, items 1 through 6, old and new business, items 7 through 13, and recommendations from our Planning Commission, which are items 14 through 16. And at the end of our business meeting, any items that are not on tonight's agenda, there will be a public input opportunity for people to tell us about anything they want us to hear about for 3 minutes. So and before we start our meeting tonight, I need to tell you the rules about public input. Each citizen has a 3-minute opportunity to address us on the items that they have come to talk about. And there's a light on Ms. Spratlin's desk here that will turn yellow at 2.5 minutes to let you know you're almost out of time. So please have your comments finished before that light turns red, so that there'd be no need for me to interrupt you. And now this is the part of being mayor that I love. ACC employees make us proud every day and are often recognized outside the organization for outstanding accomplishments. 2 of our departments have received recent awards. The Association of Marketing and Communication Professionals recently awarded 2 Hermes awards, and these are awards of excellence that are competitive awards for video produced by our Public Information Office. The first is a Gold Hermes Award for Ready in Downtown Athens for the Holidays, which is a video about Athens-Clarke County's Landscape Management Division's work with the 2017 installation of the community Christmas tree and the decorations downtown. The second is a prestigious Platinum Hermes Award. Not sure we've gotten a Platinum before. For the PIO video, Athens, Georgia Bulldog City, and that was a video showing support for the Georgia Bulldog team ahead of the national championship game. That video also featured a song, Bulldog City, from a local artist, B.J. Hardy. And I was trying to see if B.J. was here, and nobody saw him. Okay, so I'm going to ask Todd Dickey if he would come forward to accept those awards. And Todd is the one that videoed and edited both of those videos. And he's very patient because he worked with me sometimes. So here's the platinum.
They are.
And here's the gold. Have you got someone to take a photo?
I don't think so. I think we'll get a screenshot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I was thinking how much I enjoy seeing our boys in blue lined up back there, but our boys in black and white. So
And girl.
And go.
and we've got a girl, yeah. We have a lady, yeah. Tonight, the Athens-Clarke County Police Department will receive its 10th award from the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. The ACC Police Department has been continuously accredited for over 30 years, and tonight receives the distinction of accreditation with excellence. I would like to invite CALEA Regional Program Manager Vince Daru to join us to present the award, and ask Chief Scott Freeman and his leadership team, and also Katrina Taylor, Accreditation Coordinator, and Tiffany Audrey, Assistant Accreditation Coordinator, to join us behind the rail. Is there anyone else we overlooked, Chief, that should come up? Josh? Yes. Would you like to come behind the rail here? Yeah. I wanted you to, but I want you to be able to face the audience and be on camera.
Thank you. I don't know if I like the camera a bit, but I'll face the audience as soon as everybody gets over here. On behalf of the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, our CALEA Commission Chair, Sheriff Craig Weber, and our CEO Director, Mr. W. Craig Hartley, I thank you for welcoming me to this presentation tonight to present the 2018 award to the Athens-Clarke County Police Department. As the mayor said, CALEA was created in 1979 when the founding organizations, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the National Sheriff's Association, and the Police Executive Research Firm, were recognizing a need in the law enforcement community to enhance the delivery of services. As you all know, in that area, those of you that are old as I am, remember we had a similar problem in the late 70s and 60s with police and their accountability to the public. So CALEA was brought into existence then as the only international accrediting body. We served the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Barbados. Since its inception, CALEA has accredited well over 1,000 agencies under standards developed by many of the best public safety practitioners and leaders of our time. Gaining internationally accredited status is a distinction held by very few. There are over 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the U.S. alone. There's only 5% or a little less that are internationally accredited. In Georgia, there are 58 agencies, which is a very good number for a state in the South especially. The goals of CALEA are to strengthen crime prevention and control capabilities, formalize essential management practices and procedures, establish fair and non-discriminatory personnel practices, improve service delivery, solidify interagency cooperation and coordination, and increase community and staff confidence in the agency. Many agency heads are reluctant to have outsiders review their work and administrative processes and detail any deficiencies that the agency may have. It involves risk. It also requires the department to be open to change in order to demonstrate that they work and conduct business in a way that meets contemporary law enforcement standards. The chief thinks otherwise with this and understands that his agency is minimizing their risk of exposure to liability. You demonstrate your accountability to the public and guarantee professional management practices. In practical terms, the chief believes it confirms their commitment to excellence in law enforcement. Based on the goals and mission statement of CALEA, I can think of no better time than to present this in front of the public and the mayor and the commission, where everyone in the room and those on TV can recognize the hard work that the agency has committed toward accomplishing this goal. The certificate I'm presenting is simply a matted paper within a frame, but it has a much broader meaning. It clearly represents that the agency's efforts to achieve accredited status have been met, thereby demonstrating its willingness to change to effectively address contemporary public safety concerns. It represents a commitment to doing the right thing and doing it the right way. It represents adherence to a professional code. And lastly, it represents ongoing dedication to ensure the agency's resources are appropriately developed, effectively deployed, and constantly managed, all in the name of a safer county for citizens and visitors. On March 29, 2018, two professional assessors visited the police department and reviewed the agency's applicable files, activities, functional impacts, and management strategies. The assessors determined the agency's compliance with all applicable standards. They also noted the agency is committed to the intent of the CALEA process and accordingly exemplifies what accreditation represents. The assessor spoke with many members of the community, including business owners, members of the general public, as well as probably some of the people on the dais up here. They all stressed how Chief Freeman and his agency are committed to being transparent with the community. This was evidenced by the strong commitment they have to use their website, provide useful statistics, internal and external statistics, and reports to keep the community advised and involved in their operations. The assessors found the agency's personnel were proud to be members of the Athens-Clarke County Police Department and were reflective of a professional attitude with a high sense of service to the community. At the commission meeting in Grand Rapids, Michigan on July 28th, CALEA commissioners reviewed the assessor's report, concurred with their findings, and unanimously voted to re-accredit the agency. As the mayor said, this is the department's 10th award for advanced law enforcement accreditation. This one with excellence, which is the highest award that we give. They've been continuously accredited since 1987. Remember, CALEA only came in 1979, so yes, they were one of the very first, especially in the South. I'd like to have the chief and Katrina to come over this way so I can present them the award. The reason I asked Katrina is the accreditation manager. If you do really well, and the chief gets all the credit in the world, but you have to have a scapegoat. Now, thankfully, you didn't need one. She's done a great job, but it is a lot of work to make sure that all the paperwork's together. I want to also note that it could not be done without all the command staff and all the members of the agency. It could also not be done without the people up here. Without the governing body backing their police department with funds, equipment, and personnel to make sure that they serve the community, you can't do this. And the only way that they can do this is with you, the citizens, supporting, appearing here, and making sure that your voices are heard. So this, even though this is a departmental thing, it's not. This is an award to the entire community for working together and doing the right thing for your area. Okay, yeah, both of y'all got to be here. I can read this. I'll try to read it real loud. Be it hereby known that the Athens-Clarke County, Georgia Police Department, having fully demonstrated its voluntary commitment to law enforcement excellence by living up to a body of standards deemed essential to the protection of the life, health, and safety and rights of the citizens it serves, and having exemplified the best professional practices in the conduct of its responsibilities for over 15 years, is hereby, upon the recommendation of the members of the commission, awarded this certificate of advanced meritorious accreditation with excellence, effective on the 12th day of July 2018, and is recognized as an accredited law enforcement agency for a period of 4 years. Chief, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys and girls, for making us very proud.
Thank you.
And before we move on to our business meeting tonight, I have one more quick recognition. There's a lady in the audience tonight from Cedar Creek, Diane Napier. Diane, would you stand up and be recognized? She's the president-elect of the Cedar Creek neighborhood, our civic association, and they are adopting under our what we call Adopt a Highway, but Adopt a area. They're actually adopting 14 areas in the Cedar Creek area that they're going to keep clean for Athens-Clarke County. And thank you so much for doing that. That's awesome. And we'll now move on to our regular agenda. And would you call the roll, Ms. Spratlin?
Here. Here. Present.
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 Here.
Present.
Here.
Here.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the meetings of the minutes of the meetings of August 7th and August 21st?
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any written communications, Ms. Spratlin? And this is the time we will take citizen input on the consent agenda, which are items 1 through 6. If anyone would like to speak to one of those items, please come to the podium and give us your name and address and which item you're speaking to. Anyone wish to speak to any of those items? Seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Would any commissioner like to remove one from the consent agenda? Mr. Neesmith.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to remove item number 1, just for the point of letting the public know what an incredible job was done with this.
Okay, we'll put that at the top of the list for old business. And Bill, I think you've got a couple of ordinances. Go ahead and read item 1, too, even though we've moved
Okay.
into the other one.
Number 1 is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to discrimination and harassment and for other purposes. Number 2 is an ordinance to amend the FY 2018 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide funding for operating expenses related to Juvenile Court and for other purposes.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for adoption of items 2 through 6?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now's the time we have the citizen input for old and new business, which are items 7 through 13. If anyone would like to speak to one of those items, this is the time.
Tyler Dewey, 1075 West Broad Street. I'm the Executive Director of Bike Athens. I'm here tonight. Bike Athens supports both items 8 and 9 as recommended. Both of these projects came out of Athens-Clarke County's repaving policy in an attempt to create low-cost improvements for people biking and walking at a time when the street is returned to a blank canvas. Both these projects are the lowest hanging fruits. We should approve them and then reap the harvest of better places to walk and bike. We often talk too much, maybe, about the Boulevard area, so tonight I'm going to focus my comments on the east side. I think there are 4 reasons to support the on-street bike path for a 30-day trial as recommended. 1, the design provides for more physical separation. A protected bike lane offers all the benefits of a separate multi-use path, but inside the curb and at a fraction of the cost. Protected bike lanes use vertical, physical separation to separate car and bike traffic. They have many names: cycle paths, separated bikeways, and on-street bike paths. That last one is the most appropriate for Barnett Shoals. A protected bike path offers all the benefits of a separate multi-use path, but inside the curb and at a fraction of the cost. Second, it provides more access and connections with neighborhoods. Commissioners have suggested scrapping this current design and building a path on the west side of the street. In a vacuum, an on-street bike path and a side path are equal designs. In this case, however, location matters. Placing the on-street bike lane on the southeast side of the street makes it much more accessible to the people in the neighborhoods along the street. The recommended location provides direct access to the bike path to most of the Green Acres neighborhood. If the path is moved to the other side of the street, Green Acres loses this direct access to safe, comfortable biking. This section of Barnett Shoals does not have mid-block crosswalks. To use the path, these families would have to cross 4 or more lanes of fast traffic. Third, it's inexpensive. The recommended design for the Barnett Shoals on-street bike path is inexpensive and easy. It is located inside of the right-of-way, so ACC already owns the land. It is a repaving project, so the street will be made into a blank slate that can be easily rearranged. Side paths are usually estimated at $1 million a mile. There is no money in this budget for a side path. Commissioners are talking about using T-SPLOS funds, but this is not a T-SPLOS project. As presented at your July work session, Barnett Shoals is not even a Tier 1 project at the moment, much less the highest priority. Using the T-SPLOS money would take money from one of the higher priority projects. This recommended design takes advantage of repaving, puts a bike path on the ground while reserving T-SPLOS funds for more important projects. It is a fortuitous quirk of timing, and we should take advantage of it. Lastly, it's safer and more comfortable. At the moment, on a level of 1 to 5, 1 being the best, 5 being the worst, Barnett Shoals has a comfort level of 4. An on-street bike path will probably reduce that to a 1 or a 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. Anyone else wish to speak?
Hello, my name is Mark Beatty. I live at 260 Clarke Drive, Athens, Georgia. I am wanting to second the comments from Tyler here for the approval of the reconfiguration of Barnett Shoals. I bike this path nearly every day to and from work, and it would drastically improve my safety and the various other bikers on that side of town. In agreement also with the cost effectiveness of going ahead and taking this opportunity to restripe the road. It would be drastically cheaper on everyone's tax dollars to go ahead and do this. And lastly, at the previous community meeting at the fire station on Barnett Shoals, various non-cyclists were there from the Pinecrest and Green Acres neighborhood, and they also expressed support in this reconfiguration because it would improve their safety exiting and entering Barnett Shoals. So it would be a benefit to cyclists as well as non-cyclists. So for these reasons, I think that you all should approve the reconfiguration.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Hi, Carol Myers, 260 Spalding Circle. I've been a member of the Bike Ped Citizens Committee for Athens in Motion for the past 2 years. I live on the east side of Athens, and I'm an avid cyclist. I spent this afternoon reviewing the Athens in Motion implementation plan, the Chase Street and Barnett Shoals agenda items, and also watching your agenda-setting meeting from August. I'm here to voice support for both projects. 8 and 9, they exemplify the kind of projects that the Bike Pedestrian Plan advocates for. I also want to clarify how the project prioritization works in the Bike Ped Master Plan and how it would affect the projects under discussion tonight. In the master plan, bike projects are ranked according to defined criteria: equity, proximity to parks and schools, to bus stops and to critical corridors, safety, level of comfort, connectivity with other bike facilities, and public input. With the exception of the proposed designs for Barber Street, none of the road segments under discussion tonight are listed in the first tier of ranked bike projects in master plan. Why is that important? Discussions of a separate multi-use path on Barnett Shoals go against the recommendations of the bike master plan, not because that area is not included in the proposed bike ped map, but because there are 18 other projects already prioritized for the T-SPLOST funds. The repaving of Barnett Shoals, as presented tonight, provides a present opportunity at a low cost to make significant impact on bike and ped connectivity. As an aside, even if the funds were available, putting a multi-use path on the west side of Barnett Shoals by the vet school would not make sense for connecting the cyclists to the old Lexington area and its neighborhoods and schools. There would be no way to safely cross over Barnett Shoals at Whitehall, a presently very dangerous intersection for cyclists. Having a two-way protected bike lane as included in the present design would provide both connectivity and safety. Concerning the Chase Street project, let me emphasize that this is a design plan with no monies attached. The price tags associated with different aspects of it were rough estimates provided by Tool. There are no pots of money for major boulevard or Chase work that exist already or are being voted on. These monies cannot be simply transferred over to a Barnett Shoals project. Right now, you're voting on design concept, not project implementation and construction. When the time arrives, I'm confident that UNACC staff would provide more opportunities for public input. Finally, Tool Design was hired for the Chase Street study and the Barnett Shoals repavement design because of their reputation as bike pedestrian urban design leaders. That's also why we hired them to put together our bike pedestrian master plan. Public Works and Transportation Director Drew Dressler came on board just as we were starting the bike ped master plan process. His leadership on bike ped issues has been impressive. After 2 years working with them, I cannot overemphasize their credibility, expertise, and professionalism, another reason why I believe that you need to vote for the work they've produced for agenda items 8 and 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Hello, my name is John Jefferson. Can you hear me? I live at 554 Boulevard. I addressed this issue as item number 8. I addressed this issue during the agenda setting meeting recently. I appreciate the Commission's work on this, and I appreciate Ms. Link's efforts to make sure that as plans are developed, they take into account the unique and historic nature of Boulevard as a historic street in a historic neighborhood. I encourage you to support her CDO, whether as a broad endorsement of the Chase Street Corridor Plan and as a specific recognition of Boulevard's special character. I would also like to clear up or clarify, if I can, any consternation or confusion I may have created in my previous remarks on this issue. In raising concerns about Boulevard at the prior meeting, I did not and I do not wish to derail the master plan, the Chase Street Corridor Plan, or the Barnett Shoals Plan. I am, in fact, a cyclist and a strong believer in bicycle safety, and I believe that bike safety improvements on Chase, Barber, and Barnett Shoals are urgently needed. And I agree with Commissioner Gertz that it's important in the Chase Street Corridor Plan to provide clear wayfinding and markings between Chase and Barber Streets. My hope, which Ms. Link's CDO addresses, is that additional data and input, including results from the upcoming Boulevard traffic study, will be considered before final decisions are made about these designs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson.
My name is Morgan Tichy, and I live at 197 South Village Avenue, Apartment 2. The Upper Oconee...
Morgan, excuse me, what was your last name?
Tichy,
Okay, thank you.
Teachy. The Upper Oconee Watershed Network, UON, would like to extend its support for the passage of Item 7, the Commissioner-defined option regarding the approval of a force main and pump station for the amphitheater to be built at 215 Boley Drive. The additional conditions outlined in this document ensure the protection of Athens-Clarke County's drinking water and the health of Sandy Creek watershed by mandating the implementation of additional safety measures for the sewage system. These precautions will be vital to 1, guaranteeing the proper storage of overflow waste in the event of a pump failure, 2, immediately alerting amphitheater staff to the problems with the pump station, and 3, ensuring the reliable transport of wastewater to the public main, all of which are some of the primary concerns facing this project. Given the volume that the system will be handling during the course of events, it is imperative that these issues be addressed. Therefore, we, UON, support all of the conditions in the Commissioner-defined option and would like to thank Commissioner Neesmith and the ACC staff for their dedication to researching and exploring this issue so that the most effective and feasible solution was reached. We are grateful to the Mayor and Commission for their continual concern for environmental and public health issues facing Athens and for genuinely considering the concerns voiced by their constituents. So today we encourage you to vote to pass the proposed pump station and force main with the Commissioner-defined option for 215 Boley Drive. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Teach.
My name is Mary Songster. I live at 1450 West Hancock Avenue. And I'm also here just to show my support for items 8 and 9 as they exist on the agenda. And really, I just want to say, don't stumble at the start of the race. This is a big plan. And when we change things, it stirs the pot. When we stir the pot, things come up from the bottom. So if we have to address things that come up, other issues of speed or availability of transportation, we do that, and I look forward to doing that. But for this issue, it's about changing the transportation infrastructure to support alternative transportation, which was wildly supported in the TSP vote. And I think we do that and then address everything else as it comes up and use our experts and citizen experts to do that well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Songster. Anyone else wish to speak to us? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Start with item number 1. Mr. Neesmith, you asked.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to be sure the public knew what we're doing here with the tweaking of our anti-discrimination and harassment law. It's really quite sweeping. We had a good one, but let me just read just a little bit of it, if you don't mind, Madam Mayor.
Got your 5
It
minutes.
is illegal and a violation of this ordinance for any person, underlined, to harass, threaten, or intimidate another employee or any applicant, citizen, vendor, or visitor on the basis of their sex, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, gender identity, race, color, religion, disability, national origin, citizenship, military or veteran status, genetic information, age, or any other status or classification protected by the applicable federal, state, or local laws. It goes on then to talk more about what discrimination is, what harassment is, long paragraphs, sexual harassment, and the fact that there can be no retaliation for a complaint about any of these things. It's sweeping. I'm sure that our staff will be sure they get out to the staff what this means, because it doesn't leave much wiggle room when it comes to these kinds of issues. And I applaud the efforts that staff and the attorney did to pass this. So I move for acceptance of this ordinance.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, which is the Boley Drive pump station and force main. Who would like to begin that discussion? Mr. Gertz.
Just want to thank Commissioner Neesmith. This was the applicant for kind of drawing together around the table and looking for some opportunities to make sure that this is as strong a project as possible. And with that, I just want to go ahead and make a motion for the commission to find option as presented by Commissioner Neesmith.
I'll second, but I want to offer a friendly amendment to my own petition to find option. I left out one word. We talked about the 20-inch raw water line will serve as a second wall. I should have said the abandoned 20-inch water line, to be clear that we're not pumping sewage through our water lines. So I'd like to offer that as a friendly amendment. And I also want to thank staff, Frank, Scott Haynes from JWA, his colleague Buck, for us, and most of all, I want to thank Morgan Tichy and Yuon for feeding us information about things to look at, and that's what I really ran with. This was not my idea. This was their idea, but we sat down together with staff in JWA, and JWA was incredible. And they're saying, well, let's do this too, rather than, no, we can't do that. So it turned out to be a really great process, and I just thank all of you guys for making this and helping us to protect our water source. So.
We have a motion and a second on the commission find option. Do we have an ordinance, Bill?
No, ma'am.
No, we don't have. Okay. I think probably on these commission found options, we should do roll calls, Gene, because they're different from the professional staff recommendations.
Yes.
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Neesmith,
Yes.
Hamby,
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
Harrod,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
10 yes, 0 no.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, and this is the Chase Street Corridor Plan.
Number 8.
Oh, 8. I'm looking at it, but calling it 7. Number 8, Chase Street Corridor Plan. Who would like to open this discussion? Or Ms. Link?
I just want to make it clear that I've proposed a commission-defined option that allows this plan to move forward. There's been some consternation, particularly among folks in the Boulevard neighborhood, that they were not aware of this plan, and I think a lot of it has to do with semantics, as all this conversation about Chase Street is carried on for about 2 years now. This has always been referred to as the Chase Street corridor. And when there were opportunities for public input, which there have been quite a few, folks on Boulevard often didn't participate. In fact, very few of them participated. They didn't realize that anything that might be proposed relative to Chase Street might directly impact their street. So when this plan came forward for a vote and they realized that it was proposing some pretty drastic changes, and yes, these are just concepts and there's no done deal associated with any of this. But yeah, these folks were very concerned. This is a historic neighborhood. You have about 100 households on the street if you include some of the apartments. So that's a lot of folks who felt like they hadn't been left out of the discussion. So I was able to gather a small meeting, thanks to Mr. Jefferson. He was able to gather some of his neighbors, and Drew Raisler from our Transportation and Public Works Department joined us and heard some of the concerns. And there is a neighborhood traffic management plan study scheduled for the Boulevard neighborhood, and that should work out some of the data that we really need to see to understand what the real needs are on this street. And so I'm proposing that we delay the approval of that leg of the plan so that that process can move forward, and it's moving forward within the next couple of weeks, actually. So we can delay that and allow all that data to be gathered, allow those folks who live on that street to have the input into any concept, come up with a new concept. And it might include bike lanes. It might include other methods of traffic calming that will enhance bicycle safety, and certainly signage to help direct cyclists down the street. I mean, this street has always been a favorite for cyclists. It's one of the few streets in Athens that I can safely cycle on as someone who has some physical limitations. There's a lot of concern that there's no real need for bike lanes, and that any resources that might be put in there could be better spent in other neighborhoods. And I do have other neighborhoods that are screaming for enhanced bike safety, whereas the folks on Boulevard feel like it's already safe enough. And it's one of the few streets in Athens where cyclists can safely ride side by side and converse while they cycle. So I'm offering this amendment and the CDO, and a lot of it is primarily semantics to help clear up some of the misconceptions. First of all, I want to rename the document this Chase Street area corridor concept plan to show that it encompasses a full area and that these are concepts. Delaying that segment of that Boulevard segment so that neighborhood traffic management process can move forward and include those residents. I'm also proposing that we separate the Barber Street segment into two segments, from Boulevard to Oneida and Oneida to Newton Bridge Road. These are two very different, these two segments have very different character. And we did have to do this with the Firefly Trail, and I feel like this will help some of the more higher priority area of this segment move forward more quickly, because it is, the whole entire segment, I believe, had a price tag of around $3 million. So if we can get a portion of that done as funds become available, I think it's crucial, especially for that in-town portion that has some very clear active destinations and links to neighborhoods. And then I'm asking that TPW return with a feasibility study regarding Chase Street. Note that this plan leaves off any bike infrastructure whatsoever from Chase Street itself. And we've had a lot of conversation. Last month we talked a lot about how we'd like to see this particular area of town be a target for some workforce housing. It is a logical place for new development. And ideally, the kind of housing and small business development that we're seeing. But we can't have that conversation unless there's a real clear plan for alternative transportation on the corridor. So if we're going to have lots of people living there, we need to make sure that they have every opportunity to take alternative transportation. And also, I'm outlining some specific direction for interactive public input and who is notified as individual projects move forward. There's also a little bit of language change for the second portion, which allows the project to move forward unless, particularly that portion of Chase Street at the bridge where we're seeing some really high-speed traffic entering the neighborhood. It'll allow that traffic calming striping to move forward. And while also assuring that the folks who live on that street have access to their driveway. I want to note that staff's language for that B, approve the permanent striping of Chase Street, it says with the exception of traffic calming. There's been some confusion about that. It sounds like you're leaving out the traffic calming. I want to also add that we should replace the exception of with the addition of or to include traffic calming. So, and I feel like we really need to have a clear process moving forward, because we're going to see a lot of these transportation projects coming forward, and we need a clear process to make sure that the folks who are going to be impacted by them are directly made aware of them, so that they can feel like they have some buy-in and that they've participated in the process. So with that, I'm going to propose that we accept this commission-defined option.
Have a second?
I'll second, and then I want to say something.
Okay.
I agree with Commissioner Link's concern about the Boulevard neighborhood and the impact on it. But my main motivation here is that even though we're not going to build it for a while, the Chase Street roundabouts will either have a very positive effect on the businesses there or a very negative effect. Those businesses still don't know what those concepts are. They have not talked to staff about what those roundabouts mean to truck traffic. I think they'll work, but it matters that those people and their employees understand what they are and understand the concept of them and see that they do or don't work in their own minds. So we're not going out to build this thing anytime soon, so a delay and having, I'll help get the people there, having them in the room and this being explained to them, I think is well worth a delay. They got burned once before, so they're very, very apprehensive about another plan coming forward, so we need to pay attention. And so I did second, didn't I? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate it. I want to applaud Commissioner Link and Commissioners Neesmith and Parker for trying to be attentive to the details of this plan and responsive to neighborhood needs. However, I do want to note that I think a lot of the elements of what are called for in the commission-defined option are things that we've already expended staff time and energy on. And what I don't want to see us do is be duplicative, particularly when we have so many projects forthcoming in our T-SPLOS package and then our general capital program across the board. I do see some wisdom in knowing that we've got the neighborhood traffic management program study underway, waiting until the conclusion of that to do the final plan for Boulevard itself. There may be some elements that come out of that that could modify this plan. Should there be traffic circles or other things, that would mean the plan was slightly different and we would do different things with the treatment of that road. However, I do want us to move forward without sort of undue expenditure of staff time and energy, doing some of the things they've done already. I think, as I mentioned at the agenda setting meeting, I attended 2 interactive sessions at the Snipes building around this plan. And of course, staff did look at Chase Street, and they spoke, I think, very well at those public sessions about how challenging Chase Street is. You do have 2 loop interchanges. You do have a very physically constrained railroad bridge that's not going to be replaced anytime in the near future. And I think that given those considerations, we should go ahead and move forward with the very well-honed plan that we have in front of us. So I'm going to make a substitute motion that we accept the Chase Street Corridor Plan as shown in Attachment 1, with the exception of design for Boulevard, which shall return to the Mayor and Commission following completion of the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program study scheduled for fall of 2018, and that we approve the permanent striping of Chase Street between Boulevard and Newton Bridge Road according to existing lane configurations. And I do want to pick up some language from your CDO. As shown in Attachment 2, and with the assurance that the center lane remains accessible in front of the driveway of 965 North Chase Street.
And I'll second that, Madam Mayor, and I do have a comment.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion before we?
I have.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and I appreciate the substitute motion. I appreciate it because we have talked about this for a couple of years now at least, and that's one of the things we've talked about within our government with SPLOST and T-SPLOST. Let's get some things going and get some things on the ground and get some things moving. And we ask citizens to be part of committees. We ask them to make recommendations to us, and that doesn't mean we always accept the recommendations, but they at least expect us to take some action on one way or the other on what they're asking. And I think that we would be doing this tonight with Chase Street. And really, I want to move along with Chase Street because I know we've got some other roads that we need to also look at. Prince Avenue, for example, would be a good one to start with. It does have some T-SPLOST funds associated with it, and it is a more impactful corridor for both Chase Street and for Boulevard as far as people getting around. So I'm ready to move forward on this so that we can start having those discussions about Prince Avenue and some other areas that we need to focus on as well.
Ms. Rowe?
Yeah, I support the motion that's on the floor right now. I really appreciate the comments that came before us tonight because they capture a lot of what I've been thinking about this and the Barnett Shoals plan as far as the committees that we have that are working hard, the professionals that we have bringing this forward. Chase Street, getting that striping on the bridge, I keep looking at that and remember how important that was when we first started talking about it. And then I appreciate management and staff's plan of looking at the whole area and implementing, I believe this is implementing our complete streets policy. I have a dear friend that used to sit in this spot, and she's thinking, what? People don't want this striping? It was before my time in Commissioner Neesmith, and I know you guys worked really, really hard, and that probably wasn't easy approving that complete streets policy, but I think that this fits in that, and I know there might be some hesitation because we haven't approved the bike ped master plan yet, but it's coming, and this was presented to us as fitting in that what we're about to see at the work session next month, and I agree that we need to make sure that people know what's going on, but sometimes we have to just tell them what's going on after we've approved it and make sure that the next steps in the concept are we're getting communicated with people.
Anybody else for Ms. Neesmith since you've already spoken?
Well, we see that the folks on Boulevard perceive that they weren't informed. I've talked to the businesses on Chase Avenue, Row, Oneida. They say they weren't informed. Perception is reality. their perception is they weren't informed. I'm not against these plans. I just believe the citizens need to be informed before we approve it. And I'll give you an example of actually someone ignoring one of my questions that I asked twice, and that is, how does a truck turn off of Chase Street onto Row Road? There's a business there that washes 18-wheelers. They have to have a left turn to get into their business or go down to the next roundabout and turn around and come back. Well, if that's the case, then let's explain that to them and get their reaction. Or let's improve this intersection. This is not acceptable. This intersection design is not acceptable. This is an industrial area. It needs to take into account that consideration. This is an employment industrial area. And when we got to take these things into consideration. So I can't support Kelly's substitute motion.
Any further discussion? Do a roll call on substitute motion, Ms. Brown.
Gertz,
Yes.
Link,
No.
Wright. Yes. Bailey,
Yes.
Neesmith,
No.
Hamby,
Yes.
Bale,
Yes.
Harrod,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
Parker.
No.
7 yes, 3 no.
Okay, so the substitute motion passed, which was the original motion from staff, with staff's recommendation.
With some minor
With some
modifications.
modifications. And actually, I think Kelly's modifications did address some of the concerns that were expressed in Ms. Link's CDO, so. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, which is the Martin Shoals Road Lane reconfiguration. Anyone wish to open that discussion? Andy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So obviously, we discussed this at the agenda-setting meeting. This is coming about as a result of resurfacing the road into that, or through that part of the county, on that corridor. And as people behind the rail know, but maybe some people in the audience do not know, we do have a policy when it comes to resurfacing streets of evaluating whether or not to keep the present lane configuration or whether to change that lane configuration to do all sorts of different things, but in this particular case, to include some bike lanes. So staff has proposed a 30-day demonstration project for this particular area, focusing mostly upon the intersection from College Station Road and Barnett Shoals Road, and then heading up towards Whitehall Road. So I'm not opposed to looking at this as a demonstration project, but I have a couple of questions for our staff. Well, actually, maybe 3 questions. So the first, will there be any kind of signage that indicates to the public that this is a 30-day project basically to collect data, so that people do not necessarily assume that this is the way it's going to be forever?
We can see about having, well, we can advertise a public meeting, and we can see, I can look into having that lighted signboard up periodically. Maybe not the whole 30 days, but periodically to let people know it's coming.
Okay. So the second question I had, it was pointed out to me just within the last hour that the mail delivery van that goes along Barnett Shoals Road drives along the Green Acres side of the road to deliver mail, and that's the side where the protected bike lanes are recommended for. How is that going to work?
Well, I'd have to ask staff about that.
Okay. And then the third issue, what I'd really like to see, since this is a project or a proposal to do a 30-day experiment, basically, to collect data to see how this would affect traffic flows and pedestrian flows and bicycle flows and into the future. What I'd really like to see is a way in which the public would be able to give feedback easily. And so what I'm thinking is maybe some kind of website or some kind of setup where people can easily give us feedback on whether they feel this is working or not working. And I would particularly like, as part of that, I would particularly like to have it set up in such a way that we can find out where people actually live. Because I think it's important, obviously, to hear from the community as a whole, but I think it's particularly important to hear from the people that live in that area that this is directly going to affect. So with the request to have some signage and with the request to have a way that staff can receive some of that feedback, I will make a motion to adopt option 1A and B, which is to approve the temporary lane reconfiguration to Barnett Shoals between Forest Road and Whitehall for approximately 30 days, as shown in attachment number 1, and to extend the limits of resurfacing in the CY18 pavement maintenance project on Barnett Shoals from Security Circle to Whitehall Road, which I will note is actually is to resurface a slightly longer segment of that road than was originally intended. So that's my motion.
Second.
I have a motion, a motion second. Ms. Dickerson, yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I appreciate Commissioner Harrod bringing up those questions because I think they're important, especially the mail delivery one. I think it's going to be kind of understand how that's going to work. I do want to, I guess, publicly register some concerns, one of which is the traffic study that we got. The build scenario actually shows if we build this permanently, it actually shows the level of service getting worse than if we don't build it. And that's a concern I think we just need to be aware of as we move forward with this. Commissioner Harrod and I also have spoken, I know I've spoken with my constituents, I'm sure he's heard from several that have some concern that we're sort of making decisions on segments and we're not really looking at the full length of the corridor, and the corridor actually doesn't just turn, it doesn't, obviously it turns and goes down, Barnett Shoals turns and goes down towards the theater, but it really goes down Gaines School to Lexington. And there is some concern that maybe we're not looking at the broader picture of roundabouts at some of those intersections, widening of the road if necessary, or even what potentially could be, and we argued this at the agenda setting, might be a better solution is a fully separated bike path or whatever terminology. I know there's specific terminology for that. So, and I know. I think that's something we'll find out as we move through this. I do think it's important to point out Mr. Dewey is absolutely correct, and I applaud the fact that this might be a way that we could do something without having to add additional monies. I mean, if we can resurface the road and just do it through striping, that's great. But we really won't know until the demo project is completed whether or not this is effective or not, and if it's going to work for everybody. We are still a very auto-centric area. We're a suburban area. We're not an in-town area. The limited research I did, a lot of this on-street pathway or on-street bike lane, two-way bike lane stuff is typically done more in in-town areas, at least what I've seen. Maybe I'm missing some of it. But I do think, we want to accommodate our bicyclists, but we want to find the most beneficial way for all of us to get around and not, help one and hurt another. There's got to be an easy way to do this. So we'll see what the demo project brings forth. And I am interested, as Commissioner Harrod is, in some sort of an online survey tool, maybe a Survey Monkey or something like we did with the ULI study, that would give us an opportunity to really gain some understanding of, whether or not people really are accepting of it, or if there's some tweaks, if they are accepting, but there's things that need to be done, or if people just don't like it or what. We need to have some central point. And if you can get that to me and Commissioner Harrod, and I know Diane Napier, she also has, we have a lot of networks to get that information, get that link out to everybody. We could get a lot of input, and that would help drive. Since this is the first demo project of its kind, it would be good to have some data. So, thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment?
If I might, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Address some of the concerns that Commissioner Dickerson had. So, as Commissioner Harrod pointed out, this is a policy for three-laning, and you're right, it doesn't take into account different areas of town. So an analysis was done, a traffic simulation was done by the consultants, and Commissioner Dickerson is correct. The level of service is projected to decrease in the future from a B to a C. Now, for the public, that scale is from A to F, and by a lot of traffic engineering professionals, a C is seen as neither being under-designed or over-designed. It's sort of right in the middle. And so we do expect that to go down. But if the simulations hold, we are gaining some bicycle facilities at a fraction of the cost of some other construction, as you pointed out, Commissioner Dickerson. So we're just, we're following the policies. We're taking into account some of the inputs from the bike ped master plan that's going to be in your next cycle, trying to find a good middle ground. And I will say, rather than go straight to the permanent, staff wanted to be cautious and do a demonstration project, because if it doesn't work, then we need to revert back to the original lane configuration. So we ask for everybody's patience. I think Commissioners Harrod and Dickerson came up with some good ideas. We'll work with the PIO to get a feedback loop, and we'll see how this works out.
Great. We have a motion, second on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And the item number 10 is an execution of a memorandum of understanding with AT&T. And I saw Mr. Chambers come in, so if there are any very technical things anybody needs answered, I guess we could call on him. So
I make a motion, we approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in? Oh, Bill, ordinance, thank you.
No, there's actually no ordinance. I just want to point out,
okay.
before you adopt this, on options number 2, there's the word Crown Castle, and then there should be AT&T.
Oh,
Just
okay.
want to point that out.
Yeah. Okay, with that correction, are y'all ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Number 11 is one you need to read an ordinance for us, Bill.
Yes, ma'am. An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to mobile food vendor units and for other purposes.
Okay. And this is a recommendation from our Legislative Review Committee, and it's a report back on the review of food truck ordinance. Anyone you want?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, I want to thank members of the Legislative Review Committee for hanging in there with this. We got a lot of hanging in to do yet, but we got through this one. I also want to thank the staff for their hard work in helping us figure out some things. And I'll try to be real brief and describe what we're asking for here in changing this ordinance. First of all, we took out the term itinerant merchant. We took out the term door-to-door sales in the definition of itinerant merchant, because door-to-door sales are, by definition, itinerant merchants. So we didn't want to have that confusion. The reason that was important is because we discovered, everybody seemed to know, but me, I guess, that food trucks are itinerant merchants, but we had not required them to have an itinerant merchant's license. So we now, if you get a permit for a public property food truck permit, you will not require an itinerant merchant license or permit, and you will be able to also sell on private property without that itinerant merchant permit, because they will have paid enough. We also, sorry, hang on one second here. So they can sell on private property. Okay, the other part was that we added some additional places for food trucks to operate. They had requested a couple of places, one on Lumpkin and one on College. And we got some feedback from staff and from the ACCPD, and the sidewalk is too narrow there in front of Georgia Theater for a food truck to park there without blocking the sidewalk with people waiting to get their food. So that was a non-starter. And the other location is where our paddy wagon parks. So we couldn't take that spot away from them. But we did add, basically around City Hall, we added East Hancock, College Avenue, and the parking ride on Lexington Road. Commissioner Wright.
Point of order, that hasn't come forward yet. That was just last Thursday's part about,
I'm reading
that-
it right here.
did they add it in? So as I recall, our last legislative review committee that did have a lot of bird discussion, we also did talk about that, but I didn't think it was in this packet
Help
for
me out,
vote.
Robert. Item C, mobile food vendor units. In addition, mobile food vendors may operate only in designated mobile food vendor unit area in College Avenue, East Hancock Drive, and the parking ride.
Yeah, it's on there.
Did you also add some hours?
That, I mean, maybe Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, but that paragraph C is already in the ordinance.
Oh,
So that's not being amended
thank
now.
you, right. We're working on new locations now and new hours.
And time.
At the
I
next mayor.
apologize.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, at
Stay
the next
tuned.
mayor and commission cycle, this will
Right.
be amended.
So you've been pre-warned.
Mr. Hamby?
Okay, thank you.
So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adopt.
And I'm going to second it.
Thank you.
With that understanding, I was about to
Okay.
get
Is
going.
that all you need?
No, I needed to make some more comments on this, if you don't mind, and I certainly appreciate the Legislative Review Committee looking at this. And you know, Athens, we have looked at food trucks, of course, many times. There's always a challenge with food trucks in our community, and a lot of it has to do with other partners that we're dealing with, the health department, of course, and some regulations there, which are understandable, but also some things that we're trying to learn about as far as food trucks go. And I think as your committee is looking more at different locations and different hours, times, I'm glad you're doing that. And I don't, this may not be within the committee's purview, but as far as looking at, you know, because part of the problem we're facing here in Athens with food trucks is that you need a commissary, a place to store your goods, and I was confusing the two with a commercial kitchen and a commissary, which are totally different things. A commissary, you just need like 400 square feet to do something, and you're not there all of the time. But our home, you know, if somebody wanted to build something in their backyard as a home occupation that is about the size of a shed to do a commissary, they're not allowed to do that under our zoning ordinance. So I guess what I'm asking is, and it may be something different, but to look at how we can work a way around that, or add it to one of the probably allowable things under our home occupation licenses that they're able to do. And I guess I say all that because I think about our economic development opportunities here in town, and we did such a good job with getting Caterpillar here, and it created the 1,500 jobs and such as that. But I also believe it's so important for our community to look at and seeing how we can help. Just as not, you know, of course, Caterpillar has had a bigger pot, but there's a lot of things we as a government can do to help somebody create a job for themselves, even if it's just one job. I think we ought to be looking at that, because if somebody's creating their own job, that's a lifelong thing that they can do, and I just think that's important for us to look at. And I see food trucks as helping do that. There's some other industries and other things that people do. We've talked about West Broad. I see West Broad doing that, but also I see food trucks helping people make a living for themselves as well. And so if the committee could look into that, that would be good. You know, and I had a conversation with somebody who's trying to work through this process today, and I know with I'll go back to Caterpillar. With Caterpillar, we had some clawbacks that they had to meet certain requirements in order to get the incentives. And, you know, we could look at doing some things like that with small businesses. The person I met with today, they set up shop, and they have fed over the summer 345 homeless people out of their own pocket. So, you know, if we're offering incentives, there's, you know, we could have clawbacks such as something like that offer a wider community benefit for getting those incentives and for getting the help that this government can offer somebody who's trying to make a living for themselves. So I guess that's a request I'm trying to make there, is to look at that home occupation if it's within the purview of the mayor as part of the committee.
I actually feel like it's within the purview of it, because it relates to food trucks, and the whole idea was to review them after a year, although I believe that this will have to go through the planning commission at some point in time.
Yeah, I'm sure, but at any rate, if y'all could put that on your list of things to discuss.
As someone that ran 3 businesses from home for most of my adult life, I think we need to give people that opportunity where it does not impact negatively the rest of the neighborhood. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me say that.
So, Ms. Link.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I agree we need to take a new look at our home occupation ordinance to open up more opportunities for small businesses. Because quite frankly, if somebody wants to open a restaurant, you need probably $1 million in capital to do it, but a food truck is a more affordable way to do it. But there are barriers when it comes to zoning, because you don't need a large space. But, so yeah, I hope that soon we'll be taking a new look at that and opening up some opportunities for some of our locally owned small businesses.
Anybody else wish to speak to this? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And item number 12 is the SPLOST 2020 program, and these are the proposed program goals and projected selection criteria. And I believe Ms. Parker would like to be recognized.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I put forth some revisions to the program goals and project criteria just as measures of accountability for us as the commission, as well as direction to staff and direction to the Citizens Advisory Committee to emphasize equity as we also consider sustainability in deciding what projects we want to move forward with for SPLOST 2020. I define equity as redress for historical and current socioeconomic, racial, age, and or related or ability-related inequality, and equitable development as development which prioritizes historically marginalized or disadvantaged populations such as low-income communities, communities of color, persons with disabilities, children, and or older adult populations. Specifically, I talk about in the realm of economic development, focusing on providing new or maintaining existing infrastructure for equitable economic development as may have been identified in previously adopted plans, providing facilities for youth development, job training, business incubators, or other similar functions, especially those serving marginalized communities. In the realm of social well-being, I add to providing funding for infrastructure and incentives needed to increase workforce housing, low-income housing, separating workforce housing, which may be focused on those who, populations who are looking to own a home, from those who might not find homeownership within their reach, but still are in need of quality, stable housing. And within the realm of environmental protection, installing, maintaining, and improving or increasing access to environmental infrastructure and green space in historically marginalized communities. And I think these are all necessary because there are sectors of our population who have felt left out from the growth that Athens has enjoyed at large, and that it's just really important for us to prioritize and bring these communities into discussions and ensure that they feel heard when we're deciding what we wanted to do with the upcoming SPLOST. So with that being said, I'd like to move to approve options 1B and C along with my commission defined option.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Mr. Hamby.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I intend to support the commission defined option. I do have somewhat of some concern, though, about the net increase in the general fund operating expenditures by $4 million. This isn't part of the commission defined option. This was part of staff's recommendation for that. And my concern is that's an awful lot of money that we're going to be faced with year to year. And I just wonder if that's something that we should discuss or modify in some sort of way. So that's one of the concerns. The second one would be that $248 million over an estimated 9-year period. I'm not going to follow my sword on that one tonight, because I think once the Citizens Committee gets going, then there, as I heard mentioned at our last meeting, there could be opportunities to change that. My position would be, I think we ought to shoot for the 10-year just to because I think once the Citizens Committee gets together and once we review those recommendations, we're going to see that there's an awful lot of needs in our community that we're going to have to address over that time period. And I can understand the feeling that this last 10-year SPLOST program, some dynamics changed within it that some may feel that it was too long and that we weren't able to react to situations. I'd probably disagree with that at this point. I had that feeling at one time, but I probably would not feel that way now. I think what we've seen is we have the ability to do what we need to do if situations change and warrant that, and from that standpoint. So I'm not as concerned about it at this point in time. But what I did see over what you do see over these time periods are just the amount of things that we need to have happen to make this community better. And one thing we are doing that I know some probably disagree with on as well, these are special purpose, these are special projects. And what these special projects do is help us, are supposed to help us lower the general fund contribution that goes into it. And that's why I'm concerned about the $4 million in total. What we've seen in T-Splosh is we've been able to use some of the T-Splosh money to subsidize isn't the right word. I don't know what offset. Thank you, Commissioner. Offset some of the general fund expenditures, which is the promise of T-Splosh and Splosh. And I think we need to make sure we adhere to that promise from that standpoint. So I won't make a big deal about the 9-year, because I think I'll be able to make a bigger deal about it once we start talking about the citizens' recommendations for the projects. One more thing. So there was 4 of them, and I would like to see us do something about the $4 million, though. I think that's a bit high. That's a lot. That's a little bit over a mill property tax increase for the community. So I think projects that don't add to the property taxes or don't add to the expense of this government. And I say that because we've been looking at this pay study. We see insurance costs going through the roof each and every budget. Insurance, every year since I've been on this commission, insurance costs have gone up. And I just know that that's a trend that's going to continue. The other thing is I've been looking through here about, I know these goals are going to be sort of the guidelines for the Citizens Committee, and I see a lot of plans that we have done over the years, but I don't, over this past couple of years. One plan I don't see, and I may be overlooking it, is the downtown master plan, because I know, I'm hopeful that there could be a project presented to the Citizens Committee that works with some stuff downtown, as we have in the past. And I just think, things like that are good economic development opportunities that add to the sales taxes as they come in. So how do I get Commissioner Parker? Is there something we can do to add that as an amendment to your thing, or how do we do that, Manager Williams? I mean,
well,
if that's agreeable to everybody. I mean, I just think we spent money on this master plan. We might as well put it in here and do something, see if we can do something with it. We are with Clayton Street. I don't want to leave the impression we're not doing anything with that. But,
well, it's fine to include it. I mean, the fact that it's not listed doesn't mean it'll be expressly ignored. It's just.
Okay. As long as, I'd kind of feel comfortable if it was included, just because underneath economic development, perhaps, if Commissioner Parker is agreeable to adding that to her commission to find option.
I'd like to hear from some of the other commissioners before we add that as a substitute motion on the floor.
I agree with Commissioner Hamby. I think it is important to list the comp plan along with all those other plans. I mean, the downtown master plan with all those other plans, because there is that list, the last bullet point under economic development. It lists the comp plan and Vision Athens action agenda. It talks about other plans for land use, economic development, transportation, and infrastructure. So I think it could be helpful. It could definitely be helpful to add the downtown master plan. And I want to thank Commissioner Parker for taking the initiative on this. This is going to provide some pretty clear guidelines for our SPLOST committee when they're determining what projects to send forward to us. And the folks who represent these communities that we're trying to include with this language don't necessarily have representation on these committees. So I think it's really, really important that we do include this explicit language to assure that the real diversity of our population has some voice and is at the forefront of consideration when these projects are being considered.
It's right, Mr. Gertz.
Yeah, I'm not an editor. This is really odd for me to even do this. It's usually Commissioner Harrod catches this. But can we look at the comparison? We've got the handout today that came in that's at our station from staff that's trying to capture a better way to talk about in total, the projects selected should not result in a net increase. Does everybody see that as a better wording? potentially for that area. I think that's why it came forward.
I don't have one at my desk.
Does everybody have that except the mayor? It's not item number 12 listed. Do you see where that rewording is? And I don't know if that, it doesn't address the dollar amount that you're wondering if that should be changed, but that, I think this wording is better here. And then the other thing I wanted to just ask Commissioner Parker to look at is the categories are kind of flipped. The top part of your commission-defined option, as I see it, should be called the project goals. And then the bottom part should be called the project selection criteria. You see, so the whole title is programs, goals, and project criteria. And then that top section should really be called the program goals.
Yeah.
And then the bottom part where you have program goals should say project selection criteria. If we could
I see
switch
what you're
that, I
talking
think
about.
it,
Yeah.
does that make sense? And then when we get down to right under the first paragraph, where it says projects are to be evaluated based on their long-term and ongoing contribution, I think it should say to equity. We're missing a word there
Yeah.
to make sure that, and then as defined, and then to, and to me, I think that reads better for me, if that's okay, as a amendment there. And then if we're going to be further discussing the years of the period as well as the dollar amount, would that not also be relevant for that $5 million cap? Would that not be coming forward with what projects are being evaluated? Or are you trying to capture that now as?
It's actually $4 million.
What did I say?
Mike's upset enough about $4 million.
It's just the $3 million?
I mean, I think I could live with the language that was broken down here in staff. I just think we ought to be careful as the projects are getting selected and the CIS committee's working that just be mindful of, we may have a cap, but it's not.
We don't have to meet it?
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, and as the process moves forward, the projects being discussed will have an estimate so that it can be evaluated and added up. So we'll be seeing that as a committee as well as us for staff. Okay, and thank you for letting me switch that around.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, I think I have missed somebody.
Andy.
Yeah, Ms. Terry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I intend to support the motion as well, but I do have some questions. So I appreciate the language about equity because I think one of the big problems we've seen, certainly at a macro level in our society over the last 4 decades, at least certainly since the 1970s, is growing inequity, and I don't think that's good for our society. So I do want to see a more equitable society, but I'm trying to approach this language from the perspective of somebody that's going to be sitting on the committee looking at these projects that are coming in front of them. And so I guess I've got 3 questions. So the first is there's a list of, in the attachment or the definition of equity and equitable development, there's a list of inequities and how to address those inequities, which prioritizes historically marginalized and disadvantaged populations, and then gives a list of different groups that I think we would all agree have been historically marginalized. And I asked this question again as trying to think about how somebody on the committee would approach this. Does that include geographical inequity? Because a lot of people would argue that outside the loop has historically got the short end of the stick from a lot of things that this government does. So I guess what I'm hoping, I think we need to be really clear to the committee members who are going to be looking at this exactly what we mean. The second question I have, and again, I just throw this out because I'm thinking more about this through the eyes of somebody on the committee. There are going to be projects that are going to come along that I think are going to be important for our community. I know there's going to be a request from the Rails to Trails Committee to for some money to finish out the rail to trail. I know there's going to be a request for a government complex because we have issues with space. I imagine there's probably going to be a request for a parking garage in 5 Points because that's important for stimulating businesses. And so I'm wondering how, if I'm sitting on the committee, how I might evaluate those in terms of issues of equitability. And then the final question I have is, again, trying to sort of think through if I were a committee member, I imagine staff is going to request monies for things like sidewalks, road repaving, some of those kinds of things. I would imagine, I don't know since we haven't looked at the list. And I'm wondering how that will intersect with the matrix that we have for getting sidewalks and road resurfacing, you know, how that will intersect with those. So those are really kind of, as I say, I intend to support the motion, but I think we need to be really clear to the people that we ask to sit on this committee, that we're clear to them about what our expectations are and what we're asking them to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Mayor. I just had a couple of comments, and I agree with Commissioner Hamby about setting the net increase for the general fund. I'm kind of curious. I've tried to look back briefly into my notes to see if that's a formula, if we came up with that 4 million, because that's some number we've had before, if it's a percentage or something. But I mean, 4 million if we're talking $27.5 million a year in projects, or in money coming in, that's 14.5%. $4 million is 14.5%, right? I mean, did I figure that out right?
I think the ratio is 3% of the total program.
Okay. Well, I guess my point is a mill is 3.4 million, or roughly 3.4 million. I guess my suggestion would be maybe we, instead of saying the actual dollar amount, we just say no more than a mill. And then whatever that is. But that's just a suggestion. The other thing I guess I'd make a point of saying, because there was a comment made that some of the people that are marginalized are often not at the table. Well, the mayor has given us a generous opportunity to place these people at the table. So we have an opportunity to do that. I hope all my fellow commissioners did that this time and found people who perhaps were in that category and placed them on the committee. So that's all.
Mr. Neesmith.
I just want to point out about the 4 million. That's the annual operating expense at the end of 10 years when everything is built. So yeah, it'll go up each time a project is finished and goes into operation, but in 10 years, our tax base will have increased. And so to call it a mill wouldn't be accurate because it might not be a mill at all. It might be increased assessments because property values, there's more property and the property is as a higher value. Also might be that we are benefiting from sales taxes and property taxes, additional sales taxes and property taxes because of these projects. So I don't think we can say 4 million means it's going to have to increase property taxes by the millage rate at all. I think we need to be careful about that.
Ms. Gertz.
I share Commissioner Harrod's, I'm going to support the commissioner-defined option, and I applaud Commissioner Parker for what I consider to be a noble gesture and one that we need to make real. But I can tell you, being someone who's suburban, that equity might mean something much broader than what we have here. Those in the suburban Athens-Clarke County area have felt for a long time that they're not getting their fair share of these kinds of projects. We have no trails. There are no plans for trails in anywhere in the near future. We have no, shall I say it, park? So I think we have to be careful here. Also, in administering this, and remember, we've got to get 50+1% of the votes to get this passed. And so we have to be careful that we're not telling our suburban friends, oh, never mind. We're going to keep taking care of people inside the city limits, the old city limits. That concerns me, but I will support this.
Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few notes, and I like others, want to praise Commissioner Parker for putting this together. I think it's noble and important that we be explicit about what we intend to do, not just hope for the best or not just say nice things about wanting to do well for everybody, but in fact embed those desires in the language of our official documents and actions, which is what this does. In terms of some of the questions that I think Commissioner Herod had about, does this ensure that we've got a broad enough umbrella under which to plant all of these different kinds of projects, like a 5 Points parking deck, like a park on the west side. I see a lot of language in here that notes support for capital expenses need to achieve action items identified in previously adopted plans, and we've got significant plans. I mean, some of those are economic development studies. Some of those are things like the ULI study of the Atlanta Highway Corridor that calls out the need for some activated public space. So I think we've got a lot to hang our hats on in terms of some completed studies into which these future projects can nest. So I'm definitely not worried about that. I guess I do want to make a small note about not confusing historically marginalized properties with the notion maybe of geographic equity. I mean, certainly that they're of such a different kind of scale. But again, I believe that given the language in here, we can look for projects countywide and should be, of course, looking for projects countywide. So I look forward to those submissions. The last note is just on this operating expense. Several of us have spoken. I can't remember who made the note. I think it was Commissioner Neesmith that while we might set this desired cap in future operating expenses on a year in, year out basis, we don't have to meet that ceiling. And I think our goal should be to not meet that ceiling if there are some activities that we can undertake through this program that are in fact going to reduce or eliminate future ongoing operating expenses. I could imagine in 10 years' time, our general fund operating budget might be $130 million if growth continues at something like the pace it has over the last 15 or 20 years. But that doesn't mean that, we need to see all $4 million of that prospective growth through a SPLOST package realized. So what I would want to ensure is that both the amendments that Commissioner Wright noted, just in terms of the headings of program goals and project criteria, but also the language that the SPLOST staff recommended, which is the fourth bullet point on their handout, are captured in our motion. And so could I make a friendly amendment to those?
Yes. Mayor, before you finish, may I? How about the downtown master plan? Do you want to add those words?
Yes.
Add that, but we've had several people. Ms. Links asked to be recognized, Ms. Wright, and then Mr. Hamby again. So, I thought you said you wanted, I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Ms. Wright.
That's a first.
I just wanted to make sure that the motion on the floor, we've been talking about the program, it is the commission-defined option with the information we've defined to fine-tune it, are the program's goals and project selection criteria. We also have B and C areas.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure those are on the.
Okay. Mr. Hamby.
Sure, thank you.
And then Mr. Herod.
And of course, I was just joking about that, but I did want to make a comment about the downtown master plan. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, you mentioned some other plans that aren't mentioned here and that probably ought to be captured. I mean, certainly the Atlanta Highway Corridor, the Lyson Road Corridor studies will be done within 6 months. Downtown master plan, West Broad feasibility studies, got some action items in there. So how can you, if your amendment can capture maybe something to the effect of previously, or we could go all night long listing all the studies that have been done. Is there something to simplify that captures all of them in one?
If you don't mind, Madam Mayor, I think the fourth bullet point, or excuse me, it is under economic development, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4,
It's got
fifth
the
bullet
ETC.
point. Excuse me. Where the comp plan, Vision Athens action agenda, et cetera. I think et cetera covers that broad range of plans, and I don't know that we need to make the laundry list tonight.
Well, that's what we've been reduced to, et cetera.
Add et cetera to the second one.
I guess I'll be all right with that.
Yeah.
Mr. Herod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Gertz. I just wanted to clarify at least my thing. I mean, I agree that geographic inequity is a very different kind of inequity from some of the other inequities that is being talked about here. But I do think that it's important to bear in mind what Commissioner Neesmith just said. We got to get 50% plus one of the population to vote for this. Otherwise, nobody gets anything. And so I just, as I say, I intend to support this. I really like the idea of emphasizing equitability, but I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that some people may look at this, if outside the loop, and say this is all basically in town. This is all oriented towards in town. And I just want to make sure that there's enough on here to bring sufficient people to come out to vote to approve the extension of the SPLOST, because this is going to be the only thing on the ballot. And so the politics of this, of getting people to come out and to vote for it, I think is really key for the entire community, for all 120,000 people that live here. We need to get 50% plus one. And that's all I'll say.
I was thinking that I saw definitions in here of equity. Was that in another document?
No, it's at the bottom.
Yeah,
It's
in
at the
commission
bottom.
fine option.
Yeah.
Is there a place that we can add? Oh, here it is.
We could put et cetera.
Madam Mayor, if I might, under what Commissioner Parker has noted as program goals, but what I believe we're calling project criteria, there's, in that sentence, the notion projects are to be evaluated based on their long-term and ongoing contribution to equity as defined in the attachment and to the sustainability of Athens-Clarke County and its resources. Maybe if we simply say the county-wide sustainability of Athens-Clarke County, simply to call out the notion that we're really looking at the entire community.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, maybe we could just add the word geographic in the definition of equity, defined as redress for historical and current socioeconomic, racial, age, and/or ability and geographic-related inequality. And I also want to make a friendly suggestion or maybe a question to the manager. As the SPLOST committee is evaluating these projects, will they be provided with a list of all our stacks and stacks of plans that we have sitting on the shelf by which they can evaluate things? Okay, I just want to make sure that they're fully aware of what's on the shelf.
Anything that's relevant, obviously SPLOST can't be used for operating, so if it's an operating type study, we won't, but if it has some type of infrastructure or bricks and mortar associated with it, we can let them be aware of that.
Ms. Parker.
I just wanted to say to that I added the categories I felt that were most important. And geography isn't here because I think that people can choose to live in these suburban areas if they want to, versus people who are socioeconomically marginalized may be forced to the margins of our community by necessity. And so that is why that is not included in the language I currently have here. Just wanted to clarify.
Anybody else have anything to say about this?
Oh.
So I think, I don't know about anybody else, but I would like to have clarified exactly what we're voting on now.
So we're voting on the commission-defined option with the program goals listed at the top and then project selection criteria listed halfway through. With the staff recommendations for, in total, the projects selected should not result in a net increase of the annual general fund operating expenditures by more than $4 million.
Okay,
and in addition to that, options B and C from the staff recommendations.
Et cetera.
And an additional et cetera if we need to include the downtown master plan. Et cetera is where necessary.
Mr.
I
Neesmith.
want to make a comment. I understand what Commissioner Parker is saying, but one of the things that should be our goals is to put together a set of programs that appeals to a broad range and benefits a broad range of people. And it needs to be clear that people who aren't in town, they didn't choose to live there, but they can also choose to vote against this. And as Commissioner Harrod said, then no one gets anything. So I think when we come up with programs with the different initiatives, we'll be able to make that balance. And I believe that we'll have some very important programs that directly address equity. I believe we will. And I think everybody, if we're careful with what we choose, everybody will feel that they were dealt a fair hand and can support this. But the strategy heretofore in SPLOST, spoken or unspoken, is that you appeal with enough programs to enough people that everybody wins. So we have to do that.
Mr. Hamby.
I'll say this: I'm fine with the commission-defined option as it stands. Over the years, we've seen SPLOST programs and we've seen projects that are geographically located. I'll point to the tennis center on the east side, the work that we did on Tallahassee Farms on the west side. So I think when it comes to decision-making about site selection and projects is when that geography comes into play from that standpoint. So I do think geography comes into play at a point in time. And I'll say this, I don't know that, and I can't really confidently say that equity has come into play a lot of times, and it should. And so I'm fine with the language that is right here now.
Ms. Dickerson.
Well, it occurs to me, there are some, the east side has a fair number of workforce housing. We have a lot of Section 8 that a lot of the other parts of the community don't have. So we do have people that live outside the loop that are, either choosing or not choosing, have to live. So my only suggestion would be, in reading this, I was sitting here trying to ponder what would make sense. And one way to perhaps address it, and it's geographical, but it deals with equity, is to simply say, I'm going to add just 2 words. Under program goals, projects are to be evaluated based on their long-term and ongoing contribution county-wide to equity as defined in the attachment. So we're just adding county-wide. So we're looking at long-term ongoing contribution county-wide to equity, which sort of covers anything and everything, geography, I don't know, whatever. It's just the placement of that wording perhaps would sort of encompass what we're talking about. Again, the opportunity here is if we've put good people on this committee that you're fixing to announce, then we should be good to go. That's a big question, right?
Are you?
Yeah, I'd be amenable to that.
Okay. So are y'all ready to vote? I don't think we need a roll call on this. On the motion as amended?
Yeah, I'll second the amendment.
Did I miss somebody? I'm sorry.
We included et cetera.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's
a part of et cetera, yeah.
Big universe. Isn't it?
Perhaps we should
Okay.
add 2, et cetera.
Have a motion and a second, and the person that seconded, do you accept the changes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, wow. We are down to,
Committee members?
wait a minute. Okay, we need suspension of rules.
Motion for suspension of rules, Madam Mayor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and this is item number 13, which is the Barber Street Emergency Culvert Repair.
So moved. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to.
So moved, Mr. Burks.
Second a motion for approval, but I do want to make a quick note. Staff has noted that in this community, like in any community across the country, we have some aging infrastructure, and we have to figure out a systemic way to manage that. And that's certainly true when you talk about large and old pieces of metal that run under our roads that if you fall into on the wrong day, you could drive a car into. So I'm glad we're going to be repairing this culvert underneath Barber Street. I'm glad we have the funds available to do that, but we may not always be in that position. And certainly there are many other communities around this state that aren't in a position to handle an accident like this. And I do want to make a note for the public that we're going to be discussing our stormwater management program at a work session just 1 week from tonight, and that's an ongoing topic of interest for the public, and I think they may want to come attend that session at our work session on September 11th. That's all.
Mr. Williams.
I'd like to put a finer point on that, particularly after our discussion on infrastructure needs and funding. And the first I want to point out is that in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, this corrugated metal pipe was used extensively throughout the community for the conveyance of stormwater. We can't see it. We know where most of it is. And over the last 24 months, we've had 12 unplanned failures, and it has cost us $3.2 million to fix them. And so thankfully, that's the first point is that this is a infrastructure need out there that is very real, knows no geographic limitations. It's throughout the community. And the stormwater utility had the funds to allow us to address this. Otherwise, it would have been an impact to the general fund capital. And in that way, all the entities that are within Athens-Clarke County pay the fee, not just the property taxpayer. So we were fortunate to have that. We have come to pretty much the end of that bucket, though, at this point.
Do we have an ordinance to go with this?
No.
Commissioner Harrod.
Mr. Harrod, okay. I'm trying to get my hand signals over here, too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I intend to support this, but I'm just kind of musing here for a moment that since the money's basically already been spent, if we don't ratify the award, does the manager have to pay for this personally?
I'll have to defer to the county attorney for that.
We'll take it.
Motion to deny.
How much in monthly installments do we have to take out? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now's the time for public input, or for us to go to our deliberation on recommendations from our planning department. And we deal with these items one item at a time. We have public input, then we come behind the rail to deliberate and vote, and then do the next one. And these are items 14 through 16. So if anyone would like to speak to item number 14, now's the time to come and let us hear from you. And it relates to the Living Hope Church. Anyone wish to speak to us? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. And this is in District 2. Who's District 2? Y'all got your... Mariah.
I'm content to support the Planning Commission's recommendations. I think that they allow for the Living Hope Church to expand their community service operations while also bringing the structures up to code and allowing for time for them to get their finances in order to do so.
I'll second.
Have a motion, second ordinance, Mr. Behrman.
This needs to be a two-part. There's a future land use amendment, which needs to be voted on separately, and then there's the amendment of the zoning ordinance. If I could, I'll go ahead and read both of those ordinances. The first is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to amending the official future development map of Athens-Clarke County by changing the designation of a parcel of land comprising approximately 5.058 acres and located at 2150 Lexington Road from general business and traditional neighborhood to traditional neighborhood and for other purposes. Then the zoning ordinance is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to amending a planned development comprising approximately 5.058 acres and located at 2150 Lexington Road in the RS5 PD Single Family Planned Development District and for other purposes.
And Ms. Parker, what we need is a motion for the Planning Commission recommendation, and then we vote on that and then come back.
Okay.
We need a motion to change the future land use map.
So I motion that we move the future land use, amend the future land use map.
Second.
Thank you.
Have a motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And now Planning Commission recommendation.
I move to approve the Planning Commission recommendations to amend the RS5 PD at 2150 Lexington Road.
Second.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted to make a point, because it's pointed out in the report from staff, and I was talking with someone today about that situation. There's actually, there's a huge traffic issue right there because they're having to have a cop out there when they're having services and whatnot. And I'm hopeful we just had our visioning workshops last week, and we had a lot of input from the public on that. We're going to have more opportunity for public input on that. That I think it's either 1.6 or 1.7 miles between traffic lights from basically, I think it's not Old Winterville Road, from the Winterville Road all the way down to Gaines School where the Lowe's is, that there's no traffic light. So it's a speedway is what happens. And that's a sort of a blind curve. People come into it. So I'm hopeful that in the future, it's not their responsibility to fix it, but I just think it's worthwhile to at least remind people that that's a dangerous area that I hope we'll be able to address with the Lexington Road Corridor study. So,
Yes, ma'am. Okay, we have a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll now go to item number 15, and this is the request from Dan Ruza Tabria for single-family residential be rezoned to EI Employment Industrial on 1.614 acres on Atlanta Highway. Anyone wish to speak to this one? Yes, sir.
My name is Kevin Lamans. I live at 140 Hidden Cove Drive in Bogart. I'm speaking representing the Hidden Cove Estates neighborhood, which is off of Fowler Mill. I did speak at the Planning Commission meeting in opposition of the rezone request, but we recognize that rezone is probably inevitable as part of the Athens-Clarke County Master Plan, and we certainly don't want to stand in the way of that, but our concerns are centered around the safety with respect to traffic. This is a very heavy intersection. I would consider it a corridor to Athens-Clarke County, coming from Oconee, Barrow County, Jackson County, that whole area on that side. There's an issue with the volume of traffic. The speed is 55 miles per hour through this area, and there's visibility issue with respect to a curve and a rise. It makes Fowler Mill very hard to see. I had at the time some discovery regarding AASHTO guidelines on such issues, which is the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. I have all that if anyone's interested. It's rather boring, but it's meaningful. The Planning Commission did hear our concerns. They did recommend restriction of the driveway of this, if it gets rezoned, to be placed on Fowler Mill Drive. We do still have concerns about, though, because the intersection, it's going to cause a backup with people coming onto Fowler Mill from Atlanta Highway or trying to get Fowler Mill onto Atlanta Highway. What I would ask is to go a step further and look at restricting the types of uses that are allowed under this rezone request to ones that are bringing less traffic, excluding things such as retail. Another request that I brought up at Planning Commission would be looking at a traffic study about the feasibility of a traffic light. I've listened to a lot of discussion of inner the loop and out of loop and in-town concerns and geographic inequity. I know the cost to put a traffic light up is approximately $200,000. Those of us outside the loop would find a lot more benefit of $200,000 being spent in this manner for the safety of our families and those traveling into and out of Athens-Clarke County, perhaps more so than additional bike lanes. Those are important. They're fantastic. They're great for the community. They're great for the world in general in green. But I'm more concerned with my safety. When I pull onto or off of that road, I look both ways twice. I hold my breath. I hit the gas and I pray to God, because there is difficulty getting onto and off of that road without a traffic light. And I think any additional stress that's put on that intersection really needs to be addressed. And again, I'm not saying that's the responsibility of the person petitioning this rezone, but it's something I think the county commission does need to look at. If you're going to approve this, please have a plan and a good faith effort to address those concerns. So thank you.
Excuse me, I
Yes, ma'am.
apologize because I was reading and
Yes,
I wasn't
ma'am.
listening.
And I was speaking very fast. I apologize. I had 3 minutes.
I listened to everything you said. It was your name I didn't get. I'm not sure.
My name is Kevin Lamans, Lamons, and I'm in Mr. Neesmith's district.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lamans.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address this?
Hi, good evening. My name is Dan Russo, and I'm the petitioner for the approval of the rezoning. I do have the set land under contract. I did agree to having, because of the blind spot on Atlanta Highway, I did agree to not being able to have an entrance off Atlanta Highway because of whole deceleration lane plus the blind spot as well. As to what type of businesses I'm about possibly to do or not to do, I do not have that exactly in mind. What I did have in mind was somewhere between vehicle repair to retail. Now, the land is only 1.6 acres. The amount of space on that land after drain water and all that stuff, it cannot, be anything substantial. So, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Anyone else? I will come back behind the rail. Would you read the ordinance for us, Mr. Behrman?
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprising approximately 1.614 acres located at 5378 Atlanta Highway from RS8 Single Family Residential to EI Employment Industrial and for other purposes.
Okay, and this is Mr. Neesmith's district.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure you guys know that the Planning Commission and myself, and I think you guys don't really like to do rezoning without knowing what's going on, without a plan development. This is one of those cases. So the compromise between asking for a plan development, which Mr. Russo is not prepared to do, and rezoning this is that I'm offering an amendment commission defined option that limits the use. And by the way, it doesn't include retail. That retail is not going to be permitted. It's professional services, quick vehicle servicing, vehicle repair, auto and RV sales, bottling plant, administrative or research facility, light manufacturing, wholesale sales, broadcasting or production studio, and church. These are low traffic impacts. I think that I predict that we're going to see this land become part of a bigger rezoning in the future. It's right there by Caterpillar. The traffic safety is of a real concern at that very intersection. The limited sight distance is probably less than 400 feet as you're coming in from Bogart up around a curve and over a hill. So anything that adds a lot of traffic, any significant amount of traffic to this intersection would be dangerous. And so that's why I'm offering the commission defined option. Also, at some point, we are going to have to do a traffic study. Maybe it's not now, maybe it's later, but this is a GDOT road. Is there anything we can do to get GDOT to do a traffic study at this location? I've seen it horrible. And by the way, when they close the railroad tracks, it's downright awful, which happens.
It's actually locally maintained now.
Is it?
Yeah, the state used to have it until I think 316 came in, but it's
Well, this is a part of our industrial hope for place, it's right there by Caterpillar. Can we do a traffic study there to at least see what the situation is, establish a baseline so that we can know if a light isn't needed now, how much further we got to go before we need one? Sure. I'm not going to make that a part of this motion, but I just want to request it. I think it's a great idea.
I'll check
It's
with
part
that.
of our economic development. Okay, so with that, I move for approval of my commission defined option.
We have a second for discussion. Andy? Or did you want to speak?
Yes.
Because other people have raised hands first, but let me get to
okay.
Ms. Wright.
Yeah, I have a question, Commissioner Neesmith, on
Yes, Commissioner
your
Wright.
commission defined option and your list of the uses for the subject parcel shall be limited to what's in here.
Correct.
If there was an idea that's not on here, let's say boat sales or something that's not on here, would they be able to come forward with a complete
I believe
PD,
something
and,
like-
and then it could be addressed in its totality?
I think something like boat sales, since auto and RV sales are permitted, I think an administrative decision can be made about a thing like that. If an administrative decision cannot be made based on this list, then they're going to have to come back for a rezone.
And it would come back as a PD?
No, it would come back
just
as a rezone.
Okay.
Changing the conditions of the zoning.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Dickerson, and then Mr. Harrod.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's obvious that irrespective of whether this is rezoned or not, there's already a pending traffic issue with, access, ingress, egress off of this road. So my question is to the manager, what is our policy for looking at maybe installing something? I know I've seen these in other communities. I don't think we have any around here that I can think of like a flashing yellow light that says vehicles entering road or something that would at least provide some preventative measure for people that are running through there, that there are, and we do have like signs that say, blind curve or something like that. But I mean, how expensive would it be to do something like that just to sort of try to address? Because whether this happens or not, it's already an issue. So it's only going to become a bigger issue. We're not talking about a full traffic light, but is there a procedure for putting something like that in these types of situations where we can't straighten the road, where we do have 55-mile-an-hour traffic, where there is a concern for safety?
Well, and I'm not as familiar with this intersection as the folks that have been speaking. I seem to remember some years ago we installed a device out at Nowhere Road and Jared, you might remember this, the neighborhood there was a rise in the curve, vertical rise, and it has a sign that it detects oncoming traffic and it lets the person know who's about to pull out that is oncoming traffic. And that was under the previous Public Works Director. Let me check with our current Public Works Director about that. And I think that required y'all's approval ultimately.
Well,
and so,
to spend the money, it did.
Yeah.
Not the fact that we're replacing such a device, but it costs a certain amount of money, so
Yeah.
we had to approve that.
I'm thinking $20,000.
It has been effective, but it has required some maintenance.
Yeah. It's something.
Real quick, did you just say $20,000? But our RFBs aren't that expensive, are they?
They're 15.
Our RFBs with the refuge islands are 15,
Well,
right?
I'm going back on memory
Okay.
some years ago.
Yeah, that
and
just
it's-
seems really high
it-
for just a flash. I mean, I know everything's so
Just
much
a
more
flashing
expensive
It's a
than what we
vehicle
think.
detection
but-
system,
Right,
basically.
no, I know. I got it. There's something, I know it's not just the flashing light, it's, an approach and all that, but
I
anyway.
don't think the system that they put in at Nowhere Road cost anywhere near that, though.
It wasn't?
No, sir.
I'm trying to remember.
I think it was $4,000, if I remember correctly.
Just say, the traffic study will inform us about what we need. Thank you, though.
Thanks, Jared.
Andy, you've been patient.
Thank you. Well, I agree. I mean, I think I travel along Nowhere Road quite a lot, actually, because I take my dogs out to kennel out there. But there is a flashing light that is very helpful. I think there's also a mirror on it that you can see if you're pulling into the T section, you can see the traffic coming, but don't quote me on that. But I have seen mirrors in other places. I was just going to offer a friendly amendment, a minor language tweak, since we've spoken tonight about the importance of language and inclusivity. And I would maybe suggest that rather than using the word church, maybe you use religious building or something like that.
This is part of the code. These uses are part
okay.
of the code. So,
But are we required to use church to
Well-
designate a religious building? Because it has obviously it favors certain religions over others. I don't know who I'm asking that question to.
Church is a term in the code that I know, like when we had the mosque come through recently, we referred to it in our official reports as a religious facility, obviously. Certainly, but it's just,
Well, and I'm not trying to make a big deal of it. I'm just
That's
thinking
fine.
about
We
the
can
language
do
of it.
that.
But if it's
Religious
if that's the
facility.
code language, that's the code language.
the uses in the staff report came directly from how they're stated in the
I
code.
know. That's why I put it there.
Yeah. We have a motion, second on the floor. All in favor? Who was the second on this?
Somebody down there.
I don't think it ever got seconded.
Okay.
Yeah, it
did.
did.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
Oh, I intend to second it.
Okay, Melissa seconded. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're now down to item number 16, and this is freedom from bondage. And this is a special use, RM mixed density residential, and it's for a halfway house. And there will be no vote on this tonight. We can have public input, but this is an unusual thing that we have. I don't think we've dealt with this before. It actually has, I think, a 9-month time frame.
6 to 9.
6 months time frame.
6
And
to 9.
and it'll be 6 to 9, right? And it'll be voted on no sooner than March of 2019. But we can't accept public input and discussion tonight. So is there any public input on this item?
Hi, I'm Chris Church. I live at 194 Highland Park Drive. I am the Program Director of Freedom from Bondage Women's Recovery Residence. First, I want to thank each of you for your time, efforts, and contribution for what you do to the Athens-Clarke County community. A little background is in 2004, a small group of concerned women in the local recovery community identified an immediate need for inexpensive, safe, sober housing for females in the area. At that time, in Clarke County, there were over 40 beds for males and not one single one for females. Those concerned women met often and worked diligently to develop and establish Freedom from Bondage Women's Recovery Residence. These ladies would meet around a kitchen table as they developed guidelines, formulated a resident handbook, and applied for nonprofit status. Our organization's name was taken from the personal story of one of the first women to obtain sobriety in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We provide a structured, sober environment while women build a foundation for their program of recovery as they rebuild their lives. We are simply a sober living environment. We do not provide any treatment or counseling. We have no medical staff. We require that each resident work a full-time job unless she is on disability. They must attend a minimum of 7 12-step meetings each week, perform household chores, etc. Our rent is $125 per week, and that covers housing, utilities, all food and beverages, all laundry supplies, all household cleaning supplies. We also provide Wi-Fi, satellite TV, local and long-distance telephone service, and we give each resident bus passes on the city transit as they look for a job and attend meetings for the first, we say few weeks, but it's usually about a month. Our goal is to support the recovering woman as she builds a foundation in recovery, develops and enhances social skills, and re-enters the workforce and moves toward becoming a more productive member of the community at large. We occupied this property on Highland Park Drive in 2008. We have made tremendous improvements to the property, but to include both exterior and interior improvements and beautiful landscaping. We take great care in maintaining our property. Over the past decade, we have strived to be a positive example in our neighborhood, despite some of the challenges in that area. The majority of our buildings on this street, 69 out of 74 of those properties, are owned by owned and managed by RAC Properties here in Athens. We are Thor approved under the Georgia Department of Community Supervision. Through this program, we are able to provide housing to women as they transition from incarceration back into the community. We are inspected and recertified through this board every 2 years. Elements of our safety policy within our building, we have fire ladders in each bedroom, fire extinguishers on all floors, including each kitchen, battery backup exit signs, motion sensor floodlights surrounding the property, and Wi-Fi security cameras.
Chris, I'm sorry, honey.
Oh, I'm
run
so
out of
sorry. I
time.
thought I had 10 minutes. I apologize.
Yeah.
Thank
10
you.
minutes has to be signed up for in advance.
Oh, I did. Thank you.
Yep, you'll know next time. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to this item? Okay, we'll come behind the rail, and if any commissioner wishes to speak to it, Andy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as I said at the agenda setting meeting, my understanding is that this is coming in front of us really because of a change in state rules and regulations. As the speaker mentioned, this facility is already there, so this is really simply to bring, as I understand it, a non-conforming existing entity into conformity. And so I think it's great that this is providing an opportunity for these women to get their lives back on track and to be productive members of society. I guess the question I have for the attorney, though, is what do we do tonight? Since that we are not going to vote on this for at least another 6 months, do we just say we have our discussion now and then it comes back to us in 6 months? Or what are we supposed to do this evening? Anything? Nothing?
The purpose of tonight's meeting was to have a public hearing and then to allow the commissioners to discuss it. And then the state law requires this waiting period.
Okay.
And then I would think we'd have another public hearing and discuss it again.
Okay.
Back up.
Well.
Ms. Dickerson.
I just wanted to make a comment that I think this is a good example of equity, an opportunity for us to address a marginalized group in our community, in this case, women who are trying to come through recovery. And I commend Ms. Church and all those who are working with her and all those who are recovering and wish them the best of luck. I won't be here in March to vote.
Anybody else? Well, I'll just make a really quick comment and say, this is an absolutely wonderful example of equity. And anybody who didn't see the documentary that was on TV last night, I believe it was, I don't remember, if it was CNN or CNBC, but it was RBD, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I thought I knew Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I didn't, and I was so unbelievably impressed, and I would recommend it. I don't know whether that's really appropriate to say from the mayor's desk, but it's done now.
It was
So,
CNN.
yeah, CNN.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah, and it was an awesome, and I think it will probably be shown again. So, and this is the time that anyone who wishes to speak to us. Oh, we got all of our planning department, didn't we?
Yeah.
That wishes to speak to us about anything that was not on tonight's agenda, to come and have your 3 minutes at the podium. So, anyone would like to speak to us?
Mayor Denson, esteemed commissioners, my name is Joseph Schmugger. I live at 287 Fairview Street. I'm here this evening to ask this body to condemn black box voters. Oh, let me try that again. Condemn black boxes we vote on, and to use optical scan machines that are currently certified by the Secretary of State, Brian Kemp. Frankly, we're about to cast votes for the 2018 midterms in our own gubernatorial race on the most vulnerable, hackable voting system in the US of A. In one of the many recent indictments, the Mueller investigation revealed that Georgia's entire list of 6.7 million registered voters has been hacked and stolen by Russian intelligence. Even before that revelation, Logan Lamb, a cybersecurity specialist, was easily able to hack Georgia's election website, download the same list, and acquire administrator passwords to access voter tallies. Just recently at DEF CON, a hackers convention decommissioned electronic voting machines that were purchased online were hacked by teenagers. Inside of 10 minutes, an 11-year-old girl was able to hack a mock Florida website and play around with changing totals and changing the candidates' names. Moreover, decimals are written into the GEM software, which runs most elections in the U.S., including the state of Georgia. The election management software can interpret a vote as a half vote or 3/5 of a vote. Whatever a technician is told a block of voters will be, fractionalized voting allows for the weighting of a block of votes in a particular race. Voters in a geographical region can be assigned a fractional value or a multiplier depending on the demographic makeup of those voters. Keep in mind that GEM software is proprietary. The corporations that run our system will not allow anyone to see the code that the GEM software is built upon. Our American system is based on the principle of one person, one vote. The decimal points embedded in the GEM software tears that principle to shreds. Clearly, the machines that we vote on are pathetically insecure, yet in the face of this evidence, our gubernatorial candidate, Secretary of State Brian Kemp, is obstructing the need for a paper trail in Georgia's election system. Around 6 months ago, when Kemp was alerted of Russian hacking, Congress allocated funds to secure the national election system. Brian Kemp is the only Secretary of State in all 50 states to refuse those funds. Before the 2018 primaries, voter registration groups were raided by the GBI and shut down on Brian Kemp's word. Those groups were registering new voters in the African American and Asian communities, voters who would likely vote Democratic. His office kept cardboard boxes full of new registrants, thousands of new voters, idle and collecting dust without adding those names to the system during the run-up to 2016. And back in April, a lawsuit was filed to force the state of Georgia to use a paper ballot. In the 2018 midterms, 2 days after that filing, the election servers at Kennesaw State University were wiped of the 2016 election results.
Mr. Smucker, I'm sorry, you're...
Okay, I guess I can be done there. There's so much more that I can add to this, but thanks for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to us? Okay, seeing none, we will come to our reports, and the first one I have is our appointments to the Adopt a Highway proclamations, and the first one is the Cedar Creek Association who I recognized earlier, and they're adopting the 4 entrances to Cedar Creek and green spaces within the subdivision. Athens 3X Sports is adopting Athena Drive from Olympic Drive to Spring Valley Road. So our great thanks to these people that are helping keep Athens clean, and clean is also beautiful. So I always have to say clean and beautiful. It just clean by itself won't come out of my mouth. So thank you to those citizens that are helping us. I'm going to read off the appointments to the Citizens SPLOS Committee. And for those watching and the few that are left here in the audience, these are the people that will help us decide what projects actually go on the ballot for the SPLOS vote. And there will be 22 of them, 2 that have been nominated from each of the commissioners and 2 from the mayor. But before I do that, I want to do a little bit of bragging right quick. And I don't know how much we can pat ourselves on the back, but I do think that people behind this rail and policies that we've adopted over time have contributed to this, that Athens, in the latest figures, has a 3.7% unemployment rate versus the state's 4% and the national 4.1%. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think some of them are some of the good decisions that we've made in the last few years. So thank you to all you guys for that. And now to our SPLOS committee. The 2 nominees by the mayor are Robert Miles and Carol Blunt. District 1, Laura Carter and Annie Fisher. Annie, is that? Okay. District 2, Laura Thompson and Francis Berry. District 3, Adam Shirley and David Griffin. District 4, Amy Stone and Sarah Bursford. District 5, Jennifer Zwern and Katrina Evans. District 6, John Atkins and Jim Week. District 7, Thomas Loth and Denny Gallus. District 8, Shannon Wilder and Rob Trevina. District 9, we have Shane Blackwell, and we'll have another one shortly. District 10, Marilyn Wolf Regatz and Dr. Lakeisha Gant. And I'm not going to name the chair tonight until we've got all of our members in place. And I'm going to share with all of y'all we got just the little short bios on each of these that I asked you for, because I think it's good for you all to know who these people are that are working on our behalves. And I'll share that with you by email as soon as we get the last one from Mr. Gertz. So thank you to y'all for reaching out and finding these good people, and for our SPLOS Citizens Advisory Committee for being willing to serve, because this is going to be a lot of hard work. Mm-hmm. So with that, I'll move on to, do you have anything for us, Mr. Williams?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Behrman?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Maddox?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, we will start with Sharon Dickerson and go around and end with...
Thank you, Mayor. Quite a few, I guess, announcements, notifications about some things coming up. I did want to first relay the news of the passing of Mary Whitehead. She was the former First Lady of Winterville. Her husband was mayor for 23 years. She passed away on, I believe, Sunday. She was 98 years old. And the funeral actually had visitation tonight, but the funeral is tomorrow at 2 at Winterville United Methodist Church for anybody that can go. There are a lot of activities coming up that I think are exciting for this community, other than football season, for those of us who don't like to necessarily go to the game but watch it at home. But the Water Festival is September 8th, this coming Saturday at Sandy Creek Park. There's lots of family activities. It's $2 park admission, so it's not a terribly expensive thing to do. I guess it's by the vehicle. So, and then the shred event for Athens-Clarke County Recycling, if you've got your documents that you need to shred, you can do 2 boxes for free, and that's at Georgia Square Mall. Any additional boxes, I think, are $5, and it's cash only. And it's usually there's a really long line, so be prepared. I think it starts at 9 o'clock and goes till noon. And then something that's kind of exciting, that's new, and we just learned about, I guess, within the last month, is Leisure Services is hosting Above Athens Balloon Festival on Saturday, September 22nd, from 4 until 8:30 at Sandy Creek. park, and that's tethered balloon rides. No taking your scissors, Commissioner Hamby, to cut them loose. It's $10 a person for the rides. I think there's some benefit if you have a kid, you get a little discount or something on the ride, so check on that. But so that's exciting too. And then Mayor Denson and I both were fortunate to be last week at the graduation ceremony for Innovative Healthcare Institute. Dr. Shanice Allen, who runs that program and is one of our, not only our revolving loan client, but also a CDBG recipient, presented 30 graduates with 37 certificates, including CNA, phlebotomy, EKG technology, and nurse's aid. And it was really very uplifting and inspirational to see that many people. And some of them were college graduates who decided to change careers. Some of them were people who just finished high school and weren't really sure what they wanted to do. Others were beefing up their resumes, if you will. So it was a really neat opportunity to participate in that. The only other thing I'll mention, we got information today. Hopefully the Atlanta Highway Corridor and my fellow commissioner for Lexington Road Corridor will be sharing this information. But we did have a vision workshop last week for both those corridors, and we got today a link to the website where you can do online input. So if you were too busy to make it, you can go online to connect-athens.org. And you can participate through the 14th, through midnight on September 14th. And I encourage anyone that lives in those or works through, or has to drive through those areas to take advantage of providing your input. You've got time to do it, and it's an easy way to do it online. So that's all. Thank you,
Before we
Mayor.
move to Andy, I'll tell y'all those 30 certificate recipients that we were at the ceremony for had all already gained employment.
Mhm.
So that's a part of what's helping with those kind of programs are helping with the unemployment rate here. And those are some of these were, if you heard the stories, were people that were having difficulty with employment prior to this. So, Andy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as the mayor mentioned, the Cedar Creek Civic Association has adopted the 4 entrances to Cedar Creek and 14 total green spaces within their subdivision that they will be taking care of, and I want to thank them and also congratulate them. It's a great neighborhood organization, and I know that their officers do a great job in keeping the neighbors informed, and that's kudos to them. I did want to, and I certainly don't want to put the attorney on the spot, but why not? But I did want to comment about our speaker at the end. Obviously, there's a great deal of concern in this age of hacking and what happened with our 2016 election and what may or may not happen with our 2018 election. So I think the security of the vote is really, really important if we are going to preserve our democracy. I know that we've received some communications, though, suggesting that the commission has the authority to adopt optical scanners for voting. And would you care to comment on that? Because my understanding is that that's not entirely correct, and that this would have to be approved by the Secretary of State's office. And to date, only one county, Rockdale County, has been approved to do that. Is that correct? Could you just kind of amplify or clarify
That's
where
correct.
we are
There
legally?
We have received communications from out-of-state groups who have found one code section in the election code, which is pretty complicated anyway, that indicates local governments have the independent option to select whatever type of voting technology they want to select. That is overridden by some more recent legislation that's in the code that requires the Secretary of State to approve all voting technology, voting systems, before they can be rolled out for adoption by local governments. There is one pilot project in Rockdale County, but as of right now, the state law prohibits local governments from electing different options other than the current option that we have.
So I just wanted to have the attorney clarify that for people that are listening. So basically, if there are concerns about the security of our elections, really the appropriate place to direct that is to our state-level elected officials.
Ms. Bell?
I'll amen what he just said. Thank you.
Amber?
And I just kind of want to follow up on the discussion at LRC about the food trucks. When are y'all meeting again, Jerry? Commissioner Neesmith?
Whenever the GOC meets.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
And, okay, we'll make sure those are interested.
I'll clear it with the mayor.
Okay, and this is on your agenda to talk about? Continue?
Certainly.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right, good enough.
And it's,
Isn't it?
It's cleared.
It is now.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to reiterate what Commissioner Harrod said about even the fear that our voting might be compromised is a weapon. And that's the weapon that's being used. It isn't necessarily that we are getting hacked and our voting records are being modified. It's the fear that they might be. That's the weapon. And so we've got our state legislators and the Attorney General have to address that fear. They can prove to us that it's not been done. As I said earlier, perception is reality. Where else was I going? Oh, yeah. The fire station and the ag extension office land has been cleared. And so construction is about to begin.
That's good news. It's been a long time coming. Ms. Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have anything at the moment. Thank you.
I just have one thing that I wanted to clarify with all the good work that was done about officially making the daffodil our flower. The credit for that wonderful resolution goes to Sherry Hines in our attorney's office. She's the one who did that such poetic work with the history that came from Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful on all the facts, but her ability to put in the historical insights and align it with how she did, she should have been getting credit the whole time, and I apologize for not having that clarified at those times, and I might just have to say this every time till I get it out there and feel like she's got her applause about it. But that's the point I wanted to make. And then on that note, the balloon festival that's going to be out at Sandy Creek Park that Commissioner Dickerson was talking about for September 22nd, I've heard that when balloon festivals come, it is a big deal and a big line. Do not go out there late. Go early. Get in there, and there will be the Daffodil Disco will be one area of entertainment out there. Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful is having, they call it the Daffodil Disco. So I want to add that more.
Are you dancing for us?
I'm just going to pass. I think it's Commissioner Link's
Oh, it's her
turn
turn.
now.
Okay.
On that comment, I'll move it on.
Ms. Link?
Yeah, I want to follow up on the concerns about the election security. So is there I wonder if the attorney could maybe send us some information. Is there a process by which a local government or a local board of election can make that request to the Secretary of State's office for us to oversee switching to optical scanner ballots? I'm curious as to what the process might have been by which Rockdale County, made that request and it has that project going on.
I'll follow up with that, and I'll speak with our Board of Elections supervisor.
I mean, I imagine there was some official request at some point.
I do believe that the Rockdale, it came from the top down. It came from the Secretary of State, and he selected Rockdale to be the pilot project.
Okay. And I also have another quick inquiry for staff. We have about $4 million in T-SPLOS funds eventually headed to the West Broad community for assorted transportation-related projects. And I know next week the Land Trust is having a community event and to discuss needs in the neighborhood, and I'm sure this is going to be a topic of discussion. I'm wondering if there's any official process by which our staff is going to gather information from the community as to where those dollars might be spent in that neighborhood.
Well, I need to check with staff. The first thing we'll look to is the mayor and commission. There's a number of criteria that we use to prioritize projects, and that's probably one of the first places that we'll go to find out where whether it's, number of pedestrians or crashes or things of that nature, from a safety perspective. And then we would follow our normal project delivery processes, which involve public input along the way.
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
I wanted to invite everyone to the Rise for Climate, Jobs, and Justice event at the West Brock Farmers Market this Saturday from 11 to 1. I'll be emceeing, and a number of commissioners will be speaking about making Athens eventually a 100% renewable energy city. So I hope to see you all there. There's going to be lots of music. It should be fun.
Will you be performing?
You got to come and find out. Yeah.
I'll be there.
Are you, yeah, what about you? Rap battle, finally? No? Okay.
It's not really.
I believe I need a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I will ask our visitors to excuse us, so